everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today we're going to be filming one of my favourite videos to film every year, and that is my 2022 favourites. So sometimes I do it as like a top 10, but I think this year I've just decided I'm just gonna talk about all my favourites because I feel like I can't narrow it down to 10. But I might split this video into two parts. Maybe I think I'll just do all favourites. I'm not going to rank them, although I feel like one or two are my very favourites, but I feel like those are kind of obvious because they're like the series that I love. So but yeah, so let's just get started. If you haven't read any of the books in this video, I'd highly recommend them all. Obviously they're my favourite books, so yeah, let's just get started. The first book we have is The God of Lost Words by AJ Hackworth even. This is one of my favourite series. So this is the first book is called Library of the Unwritten. I can't remember what the whole trilogy is called, maybe like Hell's Library. And it's just the best like found family like adventure and like cozy, and it's so good. So the first book we follow this librarian called Claire, who's the librarian for Hell's Library, and it's the wing of Hell's Library called the Unwritten Wing, which is basically where books that haven't been written yet like live. And one day one of the characters escapes and goes to try and find his author, but like that's really bad, so Claire and her assistant Brevity, who's a muse, have to go and try and track him down and like rescue him. And yeah, and then they're also being stalked by this like angel who's like, you don't really know his intent. And then yeah, the character who escapes is called Hero. I love Hero so much. And like as the series progresses, they go on different adventures. And like this book, they're basically having to save the whole library, and I just love the characters and the relationships between the characters, and just like and there's a polyamorous relationship which I love, and yeah, it's just all so good. I just love the series, and there's so many great quotes as well about like reading and love of reading and like books and what they mean to people, and yeah, I just love it. It's so good. Would I really highly recommend. So yeah, that's that one. I feel like I'm out of breath. And then another one of my I feel like we'll just do the series this out of the way first, but another one of my all-time favourite series is The Locked Tomb, and Known in the Ninth came out this year, which I was so excited for because it'd been like a 2-year wait I think for this book. So yeah, I was very excited for Nona, and that's the cover, and I love this one so much. I love Nona as a character. She's amazing, and to be honest, I can't decide which is my favourite in the series, but this one is this one is a definite contender, because I mean they're all contenders, but in this book, I love Nona so much, and I love Cam and Pal in this book. They just completely stole the show for me. There's so many like insane quotes of them. And I feel like I was more crazy in this book over Cam and Pal than I was in the other books about like Gideon and Harrow. Not necessarily, I feel like I don't even ship Gideon and Harrow or really Cam and Pal. It's just like that, you know, that platonic soulmate type bond, and it just sends you crazy. And yeah, I'm just gonna have to go through and look at some of my Cam and Pal quotes now because I'm getting emotional about them again. But yeah, I feel like if the only reason you love the series is like Gideon and Harrow, you might not like this book as much because there's not as much of them in it. But yeah, all the other characters are in it, and yeah, like Cam and Pal, and Kira, I love her, and Ianthe, obviously I'm always an Ianthe simp. Yeah, and her role in this book I love. Yeah, and yeah, yeah, it's so good. I just cannot get enough of the series, and I cannot wait for Electo, and like some of the reveals in this book are so good, and like the chapters of John, who was like doing his little Am I the Asshole chapters, which was so funny, but also they added a lot of like lore and stuff to the world. So this was just like the perfect next book in the series for me, and I feel like it continued. Each book has a very different like vibe to it. Like Gideon is like gothic manor house mid mystery, and then Harrow is like insane spaceship like plot, and then this one is like post-apocalyptic found family. I don't know if those descriptions are doing anything, but that's the best I can do. And yeah, I just love this one. And then there's little Noodle there, who's a very cute little dog. But yeah, I highly recommend. And I'm just now thinking about all those Cam and Pal quotes. And then the next series that I finished was, well, actually those two, oh no, Nona wasn't a finish, but Speaking Bogans by Ken Liu. I love the Dandelion Dynasty. It's one of my favourite series. And yeah, it's just so sweeping and epic, and like, yeah, just, I feel like epic is the only way you can describe it. But despite that, and it's like a massive scope, it doesn't lose its like characters and its characterization, because that's the main thing that attaches me to a story, is the characters. And I love the characters in this series. And yeah, even though it's such a huge scope and like over a massive amount of time, and you just still like love the characters so much and are so attached to them and like get so emotional with them. So it's just a really, like, I feel like masterful way of writing. And I love this one. I feel like it all really came together at the end. Like, this is quite like quite a lot of the book. There's quite a lot of setup, but like it does all come together, and it's so good. And like the political plotting and like backstabbing, and it's just all so good, and like silly decisions and clever decisions. And Ken Liu does this thing where like the chapters aren't always chronological, so you'll be like in a battle, and then like the one side will like reveal something really cool that they've done and like are gonna win, and then you'll get a chapter where it's like the backstory, how they like develop that. And that's another thing I really love about the series, actually. There's so much like engineering and accounting and just like the kind of more mundane bits of society, but it's just all so fascinating. And yeah, so it's really good. I love the characters, all the characters. I feel like my favourite in this book was probably Farah. I love her so much. But yeah, I also love like Thera, Zomi. Gia is an absolute icon. I love Gia so much. So yeah, it's just a great series. So would really highly recommend. If you like really interesting villains as well. Yeah. Okay, then switching gears a bit, we have a romance. So this is Count Your Lucky Stars by Alexandra Bellfleur. And this is the third book in the series, like Written the Stars and Hang the Moon. And this is definitely my favourite in the series. I love this one so much. And this is like, I think I've discovered this year that I absolutely love second chance romances. I don't know why, but they like get me every single time. So that's what this is. Yeah, I don't know why, I just really love this. Like the scenes, the characters, it's just, everything kind of worked. So we're following Margot and Olivia, and they were like had a brief fling when they were about 18, I think, and then a misunderstanding, and then they didn't see each other again for ages. But now Margot's like best friend is getting married, and Olivia is hired to be the wedding planner, so they like come back into each other's lives, and that's basically it. And then obviously, you know, like it's a typical romance, so the characters have their internal angst or like their own issues, and then they bring those issues into the relationship. Yeah, but anyway, it's really good. I love, there's so many like scenes that I love in this book, like funny scenes, and it's definitely, it's like a rom-com, I feel. So yeah, and I really like the cover as well, so yeah, would highly recommend this one. I don't know, I feel like there's not as much to say about romance books, but quite a few, I do have a few romance books on here this year, because I feel like I've been a bit more into romance in the past year, so yeah, would recommend this one. After that we have Stalking Darkness by Lynn Fuelling, which this is just one out of the series, like the whole Night Runner series. And to be fair, I didn't I kind of, this was a series I read like towards the end of last year / the beginning of this year, and I don't think I realised quite how much I'd actually read this year, because I think the only one of the series I'd read last year was the first one. I can't even remember what that's called, Look in the Shadows. This one and book 6 or 7, I can't remember which one, are my favourites in the series, I think. Yeah, all the books with like a lot of necromancy in, I feel like the author's really good at writing those, so they're kind of my favourites in the series. But the whole series, I just love the Night Runner series. It's very like, it feels like kind of classic fantasy vibes, but it's kind of quite modern and ahead of its time. Like it was written in the 90s, but there's some really good like themes and stuff. And we mainly follow these two characters called Alec and Sergil, who are like, I can't even remember their names, but they're like run in the shadows basically. So they Oh, they're night runners, yeah. And they like work secretly for the crown to like, yeah, they're basically spies. And it just follows their adventures. And there's also like in the world, there's also kind of elves and like magical beings, so it's also a bit of that. And yeah, it's just really good. Would highly recommend. I don't know how much more to say about the series. Yeah, just like classic fantasy. There's loads of good characters. There's loads of like good themes and stuff. And like discovering your destiny or whatever. So yeah, it's a great series. Would recommend. Okay, then next we have a couple of cozy fantasies. So we have Legends of Zamates by Travis Baldry. This book has been everywhere this year, I think. I remember when I first saw a tweet about it. And like, I feel like it wasn't that big at the time, and then it just kind of snowballed. Like, when I read it, it didn't have that many reviews, I don't think, but then it's gotten so popular, and now obviously it's been published by Tor. And yeah, it's got a really nice cute cover. I do have the self-pub version as well, which is like wedged in here, and that one has this art on the cover. And I do feel like I mean, I'm not a marketing expert at all, but I do attribute a lot of its success to this cover art. That was what sold me on it. And also the fact it's like cozy fantasy, and I feel like cozy fantasy's had a massive boom this year, maybe just in my world, but it does seem like it. And this one we're following Viv, who's an orc, and she basically decides to retire from her life of being a mercenary to set up a coffee shop, but in this like town no one's ever heard of coffee before, so she has to kind of convince them to like coffee. So yeah, that's basically the story, but it's really good. It's very cozy, and the characters are all such cinnamon rolls, and I love it. And actually, it's like, I think the tagline is like a novel of high fantasy and low stakes, but actually you're really invested in this coffee shop, and there are some, like, I would call them pretty high stakes, like the threats to this coffee shop. So yeah, it's pretty like you're very invested in the success of this coffee shop. So yeah, it's really good, and it's quite quick to read as well, so if you just need a nice like boost, then I would recommend this. Yeah, another cozy fantasy is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which this one is like quite similar in vibes to House by the Cerulean Sea, I would say, but I like this one more. So we're following this character called Mika, who's a witch, and witches in the UK, there's like very few of them, and they like meet up once a year, but in between then they're never allowed to like interact with any other witches. And so Mika like hides in plain sight by being like a witchy influencer on TikTok. But this influencing brings her to the attention of this household, which recruit her to come and train like 3 young witches who are like unregistered, and they're all living together, and they're like a bit out of control because they're young. And Mika has to like teach them magic basically. And then in this household there's also some other characters, like there's this librarian called Jamie who's like the love interest, and then there's an older couple, and then there's like the housekeeper, and it's just all like Mika like finding her place in this household, and like their kind of cozy found family, like finding your place when you've been moving around a lot, just like finding your role as a witch and like what you want out of life. And it's very like cozy and light-hearted, but also again you're like invested in the success of these young witches, and like I think there's this like lawyer or someone who's threatening to take away the house. I can't remember exactly why, but they have to try and stop this from happening as well, and then stop the witches from being discovered. And yeah, it's just all really good, so would highly recommend. And yeah, and then we have A Restless Truth by Freya Marks, and this one is a like historical cozy romance fantasy mystery. they're the words I'm going to use to describe this one. And this one the author has described as like lesbian Knives Out on a boat, which is very accurate, and having watched the latest Knives Out, I love that kind of like cozy mystery vibes. So this one following Maud, who is the sister of Robin, who's the main character in book 1, as she is going on this voyage like across the Atlantic. I think she's been to New York and is now coming back, and on the voyage, and like people start dying, and there's this mystery, and the overarching theme of the story is there's these like pieces of like a contract binding thing, and they have to try and find these like objects to try and like do this thing with the contract. And but anyway, there's lots of different people with various intents after these objects. So there's like an object on the ship, and people are kind of fighting over it, which leads to some people dying and stuff. So yeah, and then they're trying to solve like what's going on, and so Maud teams up with this like what are they called, like socialite called Violet, this like grumpy lord called Hawthorne, and this like reporter / jewel thief called Alan Ross, and so together they're like trying to solve this mystery of what's going on, and it's really good. I love the romance. It's like, I think I said this in my whole video maybe, it's like a slightly different kind of romance because it doesn't show the full arc of the romance, it just kind of shows the beginning, and I actually really like that because it's such a short time frame that you couldn't have the whole thing like it, so it's nice, and I feel like it ends on like a hopeful note, and yeah, it's just really cozy and a good time to read, so would highly recommend. I can't wait for the last book in the series. I feel like the last one's gonna be my favourite just because of the like characters involved and seeing the whole mystery come together. But this one was really, I loved this one so much because I think I just have a weakness for like a mystery in an enclosed environment, like, you know, like in a hotel or on a boat or something, and it's just all gets a bit like sinister where they can't escape and things are going down, and yeah, and I love the little hints of magic in this series as well, and like it's light-hearted but also it has a bit of a serious theme under it, and just yeah, everything. I love Maud is an amazing main character. I love her so much, so yeah, would highly recommend this one. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do the other half of this video in a separate video, just because then it's not so long to have to watch and if you want to watch it all in one go, you can just watch part 1 and part 2. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already, and definitely let me know in the comments what your favourite book of 2022 was. I would really love to know and maybe get some ideas of what to read next. Yeah, and I hope everyone is having a really great day, and I will see you next time.